And 3, 2, 1, we are streaming. Right?
Good evening, ladies and gentlefers. Welcome to the South Afrifur podcast. This is your host, Ivik Wolf, with my co-host, Scratch
What
Wolf.
up?
And today we actually have one of the most prolific writers around, at least in many people's sort of ideas and things like that. I'm going to read you guys sort of like, do you mind if I give you an intro, Kyell? Kyell?
Sure, go ahead.
Sure, cool. Okay. I love doing this. This is going to be awesome. Okay, so, Kyell Gold. He's a writer, and apparently we all believe that he's not just any writer. Many would call him the writer of the fandom. His expressiveness in his depictions, his attention to detail, and his ability to capture the soul of how complex the mind can be stands him in good stead to be considered as such. Many of his stories have inspired writers to move forward and attempt to find the same sense of expressiveness. Many, thanks to his contributions, are becoming writers in their own right. As an ardent believer in the human condition, one can only say that his books inspire. Sometimes we hope that the lives we live could be as exciting, or that we could understand the adventures that his books elicit from seemingly normal encounters.
Ivik?
Some of us understand all too well the tribulations that his characters endure. Kyell Gold has been between 2005 and 2000, yes?
No, you were like just wigging out a little bit, it's fine.
11 swept the world by storm, winning Best Anthropomorphic Novel in 2005 and 2006. Then 2008, 2011, Best Anthropomorphic Short Fiction from 2006 to 2011, Years of Majors. We welcome Kyell Gold.
Hi, thank you for having me on your show.
Yes. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about, Kyell, or some of the things that we're going to be talking about with or throughout the podcast is am I actually still fine on here? What's going on? No.
You're lagging behind a little bit. You're lagging behind when you're talking.
Fuck.
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll just keep going.
This happens now. Yeah, no, I can tell. Better? I think we're better now.
You should be, yeah.
For those of you who are listening from outside, welcome to the South African internet. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yeah, wonderfully underfunded
So yeah,
system.
Kyell,
So,
you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're living now, how long you've been in the fandom?
oh gosh, I'm currently living in the Bay Area of California, which is an area that runs approximately from San Francisco down to San Jose. And I've been in the furry fandom for something like 24 years, counting back to the time that I first logged onto Furry Muck as the start.
Okay.
And I started writing about 15 years ago, I guess.
Oh wow, so around about 2000?
Yeah, around then. I think my first published stories were in Sofa Wolf Press's magazine Heat, which came out in 2001 and 2002.
Uh-huh. And I mean, how would you sort of express your sort of what do you think, or how do you believe your writing style? How would you be able to sort of explain that to people listening?
So, writing style is one of those interesting questions. I try to, I guess, slice of life, maybe more than anything else. But style is really funny, because one of these things that, as a beginning writer, I was worried about, and I see a lot of other beginning writers worried about, is how do I develop a style? How do I get my style? How do I get to stand out from everyone else? And I think what I've learned is that style is just one of those things that develops over time, and you kind of turn around 5 years later and people say, wow, you have a really interesting style, and you say, but that's just how I write. So
well, I mean, from your earlier books, obviously up until now, you've been going to, writers' meetings or conventions and things like that. You've been sort of working through that every single time. And I mean, what would you say would have been your first influences as a writer?
Influences like other authors and books that I read, or influences as in like making the leap from beginner to more professional.
We could do a bit of both.
So there's my first real. I was thinking about this recently because Ray Bradbury died a few years ago, and I remember thinking that his were one of the first books that I read that I really appreciated the writing of. There were stories before then. I loved the Anne McCaffrey's Dragon books, the very, very early on Madeleine L'Engle's Wrinkle in Time, but Ray Bradbury's books were the first ones that I remember thinking, this is really well written. And another one of my influences book-wise has actually been Stephen King, and I think that's where the what you're talking about with this sort of the slice of life and realistic things come from, which seems odd to say because he's a horror writer, but I think one of the reasons he's so effective is that he makes his characters and situations so realistic that we can picture the horrific things he writes about coming into our everyday lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, the little I've read of King, I would agree.
Buglish asks, your style is slice of life.
Is anybody still with us?
But have you ever dated a football star? Crap, really?
All right, I got you, Ivik.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've actually not. I'm sad to say.
Oh, really?
Well, I'm not sad to say because I'm married to a wonderful wolf, and just because he didn't play football doesn't mean that I'm missing out on anything.
No, it's an understood point. So when it comes to things like that, one of the other questions that, like, I don't know, like, I mean, what kind of questions do you normally get from people? I know that you've got your site and you tell them to mail you, and I mean, what's the sort of norm of questions that you generally get from that site?
They fall into a few categories. I get a number of questions from people struggling with their sexuality and wanting advice, and in some cases I think just wanting someone to talk to. Like there are still towns all over America, for all that, we just had the Supreme Court say that gay people can get married. There are still towns all over America where that's not okay, and people don't feel comfortable coming out as gay or bisexual or trans. And I get letters from generally younger people, but I've had letters from people in their 50s saying they just came out, and so those are I'm always very pleased that people feel comfortable reaching out to me in that way. I would like for that not to be a problem that they needed to reach out to someone, but that's a process that's going to take years. And the other questions that I get are mostly writing advice. A lot of times people ask me to read their stories, which I have to sadly decline because I barely have enough time to read the things that I have to read and read the things that I want to read before going to reading things as a favor or as a courtesy to other people.
Yeah. Have you ever dabbled in poetry?
I have dabbled. I'm not very good at it. I've written little doggerel rhymes here and there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you post any of them online or not?
Oh my goodness, why would you want to see my horrible poetry?
Because horrible poetry is awesome.
I'm trying to think if there's a poem in a book somewhere. So I think in the bonus story for the first Out of Position book, I think Lee quotes some supposedly Middle English poem to Brian, and I wrote that. So there you go.
Okay. I think Scratch.
Hmm?
Yes. Anything from your side?
I'm still listening in for now.
Okay.
You obviously have like a lot of questions to ask, so.
Yeah, I've got so many questions to ask, but I've actually to ask. Yes, like it, man. Anyway, Kyell, one of the things that we'd kind of like to sort of ask you as well is that obviously with the themes of your books, with the way that they sort of elicit what they do, one can actually almost see like a quiet activism towards sort of like being and accepting the entire idea of being homosexual, trans, and anything along the lines of that. I mean, is that something that you feel very, very strongly about? Obviously, but like, what makes you sort of like talk about it in that sense?
So early on, as I was writing, this was actually when I was writing the first books that I had out, the Argaea series, which is in this Renaissance world. I was debating how much I wanted to make the attitudes towards homosexuality reflective of what's in our current world. And there's a certain value to that. Of course, I went to that with the Out of Position books, which are set in an analog of our current world. So there's value in showing people struggling against that. But I do also think that there's a lot of value in writing the world as you would like it to be. And so there was a conscious decision with that world to make homosexuality generally accepted. The conflicts there come from the fact that you have to procreate and have an heir to carry on your name if you're a member of a noble family. So that was the conflict, one of the conflicts that the main character had. But I really feel that kind of projecting the world as we would like to see it provides an example for people and a way that they can change their lives in a lot of very small ways, maybe just by being a little more accepting of other people, reaching out and saying a kind word to someone instead of turning away. And those little things do a lot to change our world, and maybe as much as the people who canvass and send out mailers and phone calls and that lead to the big flashy decisions, which are also very important, not to understate those. But I think the foundation of those decisions comes from a lot of people living their lives in slightly different, slightly more accepting ways.
Wow. One of the questions from the from the group here is the entire idea is, well, Buglish again asks, is it hard to find narrators to put your books on Audible? The next question is, or at least the follow-on, is then about Jeremy Sewell and the same voice the entire time.
So this was, when did this happen? Between 2 and 3 years ago, I want to say. It might have been more recent. the leading provider of audiobooks in this country, Audible, which was bought by Amazon, pioneered a platform called ACX, and I should emphasize that I don't get any sort of compensation for talking about these companies, but ACX stands for Audiobook Creation Exchange, and it's a way for authors to post their books and for narrators to find a book to read, so that you can sort of not crowdsource, it's not the right word.
It's sort of matchmake.
But it's sort of an open marketplace.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I put a couple books up. Jeremy Sewell I'd known for a couple years. He's one of the voices on Notcast. I'd met him when I traveled down to Dallas for Furry Fiesta, and he had actually been a guest on our podcast and had talked about, he had started to do these little narrations of, he had done the first chapter, I think, of Out of Position. He did the first chapter of Save the Day and a couple other books. And so I approached him and asked if he wanted to do an entire book. And he was very enthusiastic about it. We set it up through ACX, and he got the recordings done, and we put the books up. As far as continuing to have him for the whole series, I feel very lucky to be able to do that. Whenever I can, I want to keep a book series as consistent as possible. That's probably the better way to say it. Which extends to having the same artists work on the cover and interiors if I can. Same narrator for the books if I can. So, go ahead.
So almost very Terry Pratchett-esque.
Almost, although, excuse me, as I understand it, the
Kyell?
oral books changed narrators partway through, and that caused a bit of a furor among some of the fans of the audiobooks.
Scratch, yeah? Did he drop out?
No, I think he's still in. Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
There's just some delay.
Are you still there?
The two of you.
Yeah.
There's just some delay between the two of you, on my side at least.
Okay. Well, we're halfway around the world.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's pretty good for halfway around the world.
No, very much.
One of the questions that Rakuin has sort of posted here. Now he mentions you declining an Ursa Major nomination, and he kind of asks pretty much along the lines of, however, as it could be seen as a nice gesture, but he also says that it could also be considered as arrogance. Do you think, though, did you consider that while you were sort of telling them to, just allow other people to have a chance at it?
I did, and that was, I had been thinking about it for a year or so before I actually withdrew from the Ursa Majors, and in the end, I talked to several people about it. As it turns out, there were a couple examples that I took, and for example, famously, and I hesitate to mention these because it seems like I'm putting myself in the same category, but Phil Folio declined Hugo nominations for Girl Genius for the Graphic Novel Award. That was also partly because it was a new award and he wanted to make sure that it didn't get overwhelmed by one winner. Neil Gaiman has generally declined further nominations for the Hugo Awards. And it's not so much, it could be construed as arrogance, but in the end it was something that I felt that I wanted to do. And however other people want to interpret that is up to them. I think it was a recognition that I have a large number of very passionate, very dedicated fans, and I didn't want to stop writing books. So I felt like in order for it was similar to Phil Folio's rationale in that I wanted furry fandom to be taken more seriously as a genre, and it's difficult to do that when you have a single person dominating awards for a long stretch of time. And in the end, I felt, I've won enough. What would it mean to win one more, as opposed to someone else who might be winning their award for the first time? And I just felt that the awards could better reflect the diversity of.
Hello? Everyone still there?
In the furry fandom.
Oh, there we go.
Hello, yes. Yeah, Kyell's just sort of dropping out a little bit every now and again. I'm not necessarily sure whether that's my problem or if that's someone else's problem.
It could just be the travel.
Yeah, core quality information. Yeah.
Yeah, my signal seems to be still pretty strong, but it could just be any of the myriad numbers of connections.
Yeah. I mean, like, honestly, we're from South Africa. We've got somebody streaming from Germany, and then we have you from America. So it's a very
it's an interesting hodgepodge of
international
places
podcast
that the series
tonight.
needs to go. Yeah.
Drop off again?
No, we're good.
Yeah, it's me.
Well, you're kind of lagging behind a little bit. That's about it.
It is. I get occasional breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What are the other questions now? In respect to, because that was actually one of the questions I wanted to ask you on Thursday as well. But in respect to people pirating your work, putting them out there, and sort of like sharing them amongst people.
Hello? God damn it.
Great.
Yeah. So, Kyell, I didn't know if you heard that from Ivik. He says, like, how do you feel about...
Sorry, you dropped for a second.
Yeah, Kyell, yeah, fuck. Sorry.
That's what would happen.
Yeah, that's what would have happened. Okay, we're back, I think. I hope. Everyone still there?
Yes. Okay. We're back now.
Okay,
yes.
I think so.
We're back.
Right, everything's good.
Okay. Last question was on piracy.
One of the things that happened is that, when I added the two of you, I apparently became the control administrator. So if Bravura is holding the call, then we should be fine.
Okay, cool.
Okay, cool. That should be fixed.
Let's hope so.
Awesome sauce. Anyway, you heard my question?
Yes.
Piracy.
So the question basically, how do I feel about piracy? I feel like it's a thing that's going to happen, and there isn't a whole lot I can do about it, and so it's not really worth me wasting a lot of my energy worrying about.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Fair point, but is there, like, do you feel negatively towards your work reaching people who would otherwise not necessarily either have been able to buy, or, like, countries that your work doesn't necessarily ship to, or something like that? Like, is that inherently a negative thing, or is it
it's
more
not
just
it's
about...
not a negative thing. The problem is that, I think about that, of course. There are people who have come up and said, I downloaded your books off the internet and now I feel bad and I want to give you some money for them. But then you also get people putting the things out there who say, how dare you artists charge money for the things you produce? I'm going to make it available for free because I don't believe you should be able to get money for these works that you've made.
That's a horseshit excuse, if you'll pardon my language.
Yeah, so, I appreciate the fact that there are people out there who get to see them, but, all of my books on Amazon, you can get free samples of, if you have an ebook reader, or, Amazon makes their reader available to everyone, and you can very easily get a free sample of, I forget what Amazon's percentage is now, 10 or 20% of the book. So it's not like the books are locked away behind paywalls. It's it should be easy enough to get enough of a feel to know if you're going to want to purchase the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've never really been someone to support. Yeah, confession time. I've used to pirate a lot of the stuff that I consumed back when I was still in university and in high school, because I mean back then you didn't really have a lot of money. But
Right.
But if you work a 9 to 5 and you can afford stuff, and like I'm working in the game design sphere, and it's the idea of something that an artist creates becoming part of the society and should therefore be available for free. That is a horseshit excuse, because musicians need to sort of still be able to buy food and a roof over their heads, and the same goes with anyone else: artists, writers, game developers, whatever. I mean, you can say as much as you want about the value of art and its place in society, but these people still need to eat.
Right. And it has some kind of impact. I'm not sure what. I've talked to other artists about it. Furry artists get their work pirated all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had a lot of discussions, and there's certainly, it's probably more, how should I say this? It's, for a writer, it's better because I have all these books out there that people can buy. And so someone who pirates one of my books might then say, wow, that was really good. I want to get more of them. And I feel like I should, give the author money for them. But someone who pirates a piece of furry art, it's really hard to go somewhere and say, well, I guess I should buy something that this artist made, but it's not as evident how to do that. So
Fair point.
I think for a writers I think are less frequently pirated because it's also slower to consume books.
Yeah.
You can just look at a whole website full of pictures in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, and and not just that, like the medium is, like, I suppose it sort of kind of still suffers from the idea of the medium can be put online for everyone to consume, but usually writing stuff is a lot more, yeah, like you said, it's evident where you need to put the money if you want to support the person, not so much with artists. I mean, you get Patreon these days, but it's still like a little bit few and far between, and it's not the consumption of one product. It's more the monetary support of a career than anything else.
Yeah.
Right. And there was a famous a strip done by the comic strip The Oatmeal about.
I love The Oatmeal.
Yeah. Did you? So the Game of Thrones pirating one.
Yeah.
Where they said there is literally nowhere I can go to buy this show.
Yeah.
Like, they hadn't put it out on disc. HBO didn't have their streaming service yet. So if you had not watched it when it came out on HBO or weren't a subscriber to HBO, then you couldn't get it.
Yeah.
And the whole strip was about, I want to give these people money to watch this show, but there's nowhere to do it. So
yeah. And to me, at least to a large degree, the issue with not the issue with piracy, but like the biggest driver of why people would pirate stuff as opposed to buying things, I think, at least for like the people who actually would pay money for this, is convenience. Like big box box stores are still there, but if I'm sitting in front of my PC and I look at, for example, a page of a game on Steam, and I see there's like 4 levels of DRM I need to go through, and it's gonna lock me out whenever the internet's going down, then I'm gonna sit back and say, you know what? It's more convenient for me to pirate this thing now, as opposed to it would be being more convenient for me to buy it on Steam or something. Right,
and I do try hard to make all of my things available on as many platforms as I can. I frequently get questions online when I talk about these projects, and people say, oh, is this going to be, for my Patreon book, is that going to be for sale to everyone later? Is this book going to come out as an ebook? Is this book going to be at this convention? I'm like, yes. The answer to, am I going to make my work more available to people to buy or peruse, is always yes.
Fair point. Fair point. Like, do I want to lock myself out from some of my customer base? Yeah, that seems like a good idea.
I mean, so I do have a Patreon now, and the support that people give it, I feel what I'm doing in exchange is I'm saying, you get to see this novel in progress as I'm writing it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that when the novel's done, I won't also be selling it to people who didn't want to come on to the Patreon, who didn't want to see it get written, who just want to read it. Of course, everyone who wants to see it will have a chance to.
Yeah. I'm back.
Hi.
Yeah, no, that's actually pretty awesome about, like, sort of what you guys are talking about. I was just listening for a while there, and like, I agree completely with a lot of what was going on. Although I did miss, like, bits and pieces here and there. One of the things that well, obviously, you're more than welcome to plug your Patreon account. That's
I was trying not to. I was trying not to mention it specifically, but I was using it. It was an example that came up.
But I mean, the Patreon helps artists as much as possible sometimes. And the thing is that there were, if I'm not mistaken, there was somebody who was on Twitter recently. Who's the guy who's doing Amorous again? I forgot his name.
I'm not sure.
But in any case, so I mean, he's got a Patreon account, and yes, it's fairly expensive, some of the things that he's sort of asking for, but it's not above and beyond what he's actually doing. He doesn't. And I mean, like, the thing is that the perks that he gives the people who are good patrons to him, sort of helps him out, makes sure that he gets enough animators in, gets everything that he needs to do, like, nice and ready. But one of the things is that, like, a lot of people sign on, they say, no, we're going to pay this, and then they sign off directly afterwards.
Right. I've had several email exchanges with the people at Patreon about that. And again, it sort of seems to be like piracy, one of those things that's just going to happen. And I think my fans get more upset about it than I do. When there was a lot of piracy coming off the Patreon site, I got several very frantic messages telling me, you need to report these people, they're stealing your content, you could file a DMCA, whatever, injunction against them. And I thought, it was funny to me because way back in the day, someone, I think, literally ran every page of one of my books through a scanner and posted it as a PDF in order to pirate it.
That's dedication.
And right, whatever. I felt I was flattered. I was like, somebody wants my books to be out there so much that they sat there for 300 pages and scanned it and then compiled it as a PDF and posted it. But yeah, that the Patreon, I think what people lose focus of is the fact that you do have core fans. And
I think we kind of lost him.
Something, it feels a little shady. Are you here?
Yeah.
We lost you a little bit, but yeah, you're back now.
Okay.
You were saying something regarding, like, the core of the issue is that there are hardcore fans or something like that.
Right. The core of the issue is there's fans. They're able to support the artist, and the people that come in and make promises and leave again don't detract from that. They don't take away the support that your fans are giving you. Mm-hmm. So I'm personally just really extremely pleased and flattered that I have people willing to give some money to me and Rukus. Rukus is my partner on the Patreon, and I think that's great. And you'll have other people who aren't so great, but that's fine, you know.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, and honestly, one of the things that we also want to, or at least that I want to talk about, is that, I mean, you are somebody who has garnered quite a lot of attention from the furry community through your books and through you being in places and things like that. I mean, you went to several, or you were a guest of honor at several different conventions. I mean, it started. Did it start at 2009?
I was actually invited to Camp Feral, I think, in 2008, and we had already committed to go to Eurofurence that year. And Eurofurence at Camp Feral sadly overlap more often than not. But Camp Feral very kindly agreed to wait a year, and so I got to go in 2009. And Camp Feral, by the way, if you have the means to go out to Toronto for a weekend in August, it's like, well, it's like no other FurryCon I've been to, because you go out into the remote Canadian wilderness and live in a cabin for 3 days, and you can shoot a bow and arrow and zip line and walk up on ropes 50 feet above the ground and have just tons of fun with everyone. So that was a terrific experience. And the other one, I think Furry Fiesta was one of the other first ones that I went to, and that kind of came up because they had just started their convention, and I was following the podcast at the time, and I knew a couple of the people, and they decided to invite me down as a guest in 2010, and that was, I think, the first hotel con where I was a guest of honor, which was very nice.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously, given our conversation on Thursday as well, I mean, you don't seem sort of like other people who would become popular and then sort of not necessarily give other people the opportunity to talk to you, or sort of remove yourself from the fandom a little bit. I mean, like, obviously we're having this conversation right now specifically because sort of that is your mentality. And it's interesting to sort of note that, I mean, like, even though you are what most people would consider a personality, I guess.
Is that a thing now?
No, it's a thing. It's a thing because I made it a thing right now. Personality.
Well, I like to say fur famous, or some people like Pawdfur. I'm not as big a fan of Pawdfur, but that's fine. Whatever people want to say. No, and I think, as I said when we talked on Thursday, I think one of the really great things about the furry community is that the people who are furry famous, or what did you say? Furlebrities?
A personality.
Furlebrities is cool too.
Oh God! Please don't let any of those catch on.
I need them to catch on.
But the people who have accomplished a lot in the fandom, who become guests of honor, become well known.
Yellow.
You drop out again.
It's probably the driving.
Yeah.
Oh, for those of you who don't know, like, Kyell is driving around, I think, to somewhere. Oh yeah, he just completely dropped the call.
Yeah, okay. We'll get him back just now. Since we can take this opportunity, obviously, those of you who've been listening, Kyell has a Patreon account.
Hello? I'm back.
You're back.
Welcome back. But anyway, Kyell has a Patreon account. Please go have a look at him over there. Obviously, those of you from who are listening from Furry FM land, you know, follow him on every medium that you want to. He is really a really good writer. He's, as Buckdish has actually said, humble gold.
Yeah. Quite possibly.
So yeah, I mean, like, please do go right ahead and follow him off of our Tumblr site or off of our Twitter site. We've posted his his Fur Affinity account. There's a lot of short stories on there.
Yes. A lot of short stories, previews of novels, and so on. Twitter is really where if you only had to follow one thing, I think most of it comes through on Twitter. FA is probably where a lot of my work gets posted, but I generally will talk about things on Twitter, and the blog that I write automatically tweets every time I post to it, so you could then follow it from there.
Okay.
But I'm not as active on Facebook, for example, or Google+, which apparently a lot of people are active on Google+, we were talking about earlier too.
One of the questions that Doge actually has here is he wants to know about your process of writing. And pretty much he asks whether you, especially with, say, the Vola series, what is your process for doing that? Do you go with the flow of the story, or do you set, obviously, I mean, like most writers have to set and think out, like, and plan beforehand, but is there ever a point that you just write and it just sort of like the character themselves sort of play themselves out as you're writing about them?
My writing process has evolved quite a bit over the years. The process of just sitting down and writing and letting it all flow out, in the writing community is called pantsing, which I think comes from writing by the seat of your pants. So people who just sit down and write are known as pantsers. And I did that for the first few books that I wrote because it was easy, because the characters would just tell me what the story was. But even then, I would get to a point about a third of the way through where I would say, I kind of know where I want this to go, but that's like way down the road and I don't know what's going to happen next. And so I would quickly jot down notes and signposts as a means to get through the rest of the book, which then I would promptly ignore, but at least it would let me believe that there was a road to follow.
Okay.
I've gone more towards, I've leaned more towards outlining in recent years because it helps me work out the whole book and the process of the book, and then I can still have the fun of writing and discovering how the book goes, and it doesn't always follow the outline, but it helps me work out a lot of the story problems before I fall into them.
Okay. Pantsing doesn't necessarily sound like a very positive sort of nickname for doing something like that.
It doesn't have a positive connotation to it.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's got a positive connotation. Is there? Are there actually writers who would detract against like pantsers?
There are, but I think for the most part there are always writers who are going to say, you know, this is how I write and this is the best way to do it. And if you do it that other way, then you're going to wind up rewriting and editing because you're going to fall into all these problems and so on. And there are people who also say, I can't outline because then it takes all the joy out of discovering the story.
Huh.
I guess just sort of, I guess the negative connotation would maybe come from something like people thinking that there wasn't any thought put into the thing. It's just like, but then again, the idea of a story writing itself is not unheard of. So, yeah, it's pros and cons.
Yeah, and honestly, if you have a really strong sense of the characters and the story, then, you know, and I mean, I have a good friend who's a very successful writer who pretty much is a complete pantser. She just sits down and writes her stories. She has a terrific sense of story and a great sense of, you know, what makes a good one. And so she trusts her instincts, and they work really well.
Okay. One of the other questions that I wanted to ask is that, I mean, obviously you're also slightly well known in the non-furry community. How do you sort of balance that? Like, I mean, do you probably go to like furry, non-furry conventions as well, also to sort of plug your books and things like that. But I mean, like, how do they feel about you being a furry or writing in an anthropomorphic sort of sense?
I was very nervous about presenting myself as a furry to the science fiction community, they've gotten, initially there was a lot of, or there was at least the perception on the furry part. There's a general perception in the furry community that people don't like, or people look down on furries, which is true in some cases, but not nearly as many as we think it is. The science fiction community now is, I think they view it as, well, that's an interesting thing. I'm probably not interested in it, but cool that you're doing it. I was at I had a story published recently in an anthology, and went to do a reading for that story, and I mentioned in the course of the reading, someone asked about something that I was working on, and I said, oh, but that's one of my furry books, and they were like, oh, okay. And it was very much like, well, that's a thing you're doing, and the next step, of course, is to get them to the point where they say, oh, maybe I am interested in this.
Has anybody ever sort of thanked you for something like that, like saying, oh, thank you for, writing this book? It actually brought me to a new understanding of who I was on my side. Obviously, from the gay and LBGT community, there's probably a lot from that. Like a lot of people would most probably, myself included, actually.
Yeah, I was about to say someone is about to.
I've already thanked him for that, but I will thank him again now while we're online. But I mean, it helped people work through those issues. But I mean, above and beyond that, like from a furry and an anthro sense, has anybody ever said, thank you for sort of lighting the path towards, being like that, being able to express oneself like that?
I have gotten that, yes. It's a lot of times it comes through people saying, oh, I was having struggles with my sexuality, and a friend of mine recommended this book to me. So they come to the most often it's Waterways or Out of Position. They come to these books through.
Damn it. Yeah.
Through was the last word.
Yeah.
Hey, these fuzzy animal people are kind of cool, and I wonder which fuzzy animal person I would be.
You dropped out a little bit there.
I've had a few people. There was one guy in particular. Sorry, are we back?
Yeah, we're back.
We're back.
Okay.
You're just mentioning like people getting into your books through something, through someone, or?
Mostly through the gay side, where they'll have a friend who says, or they'll say, well, I was struggling with my sexuality, and a friend recommended these books, and then I really liked the message about sexuality, and then I started thinking that the animal people were cool too, and so I get that every now and then.
Okay.
But that's sort of cool. That I wouldn't really say. It's cool that your work is sort of approached from both sides, both from the furry community and from people who sort of reach your books through someone telling them like, hey, this might give you a little bit of clarity on your own sexual identity or whatever. And oh, by the way, these are anthro characters, kind of thing.
And by the way, fox people are kind of neat.
Yeah.
But it's the out of position books actually have a somewhat of a following in the gay romance community. Waterways has quite a bit of traction. I keep seeing it pop up on like gay teen forums.
Yeah.
So yeah, a couple of these books find their way out into non-furry venues, and then occasionally you'll get people coming by and saying, oh, and also the furry thing is cool.
But I mean, that does happen to do. That has a lot to do with the way that you sort of portray these people. I mean, they're very, very human, even though they're not. I mean, like obviously you balance that quite well. Where on the one side, you have these very, very human emotions,
It's very the characters are just plain relatable. Like that's the thing.
Oh well, thank you. Yes, I mean, there's an adage sort of in the science fiction community where they say, you can write aliens, but they have to be somewhat human. And, obviously all of the people reading your stories are going to be human, maybe to a slightly lesser extent in the furry community, but mostly human, and we all have to be able to relate. So the trick is to say, and I think it comes from us imagining, how would we be different if we were actually animal people? Like, well, we would still be people. We would still have the same emotions and feelings and interactions, but we'd be fuzzy.
Yeah.
And,
that's basically what it comes down to. Like, the interactions and the feelings and everything are still going to be the same, but it's just that added sort of layer. Excuse the pun, that comes into it.
right.
Ivik, you still there? Yeah. I think we might have lost Ivik. Might be a little bit of lag on his side. Yep, we just lost him.
Oops.
Yeah. But I mean, Ivik, you back? Oh no, sorry. The whole idea, I would assume, like, yeah. I'm not 100% familiar with all of your work, but how much of what of your writing is based on sort of gay relationships? Like, is it most of it, or what?
Yeah, a good chunk of it. I'm starting to maybe branch out a little more.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where a lot of my my core, I don't know, my fans or following came from.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've sort of stuck with that.
Okay.
And I'm trying to sort of explore some broader issues with the more recent books, and maybe say it's not necessarily about being gay, but it's about how to cope with some other things once you are, or when you are.
Mm.
Like in Green Fairy, one of the plot points is that the protagonist has an internet boyfriend and has sort of idealized what their relationship is going to be like. And so it's not necessarily about the fact that he's gay, although that complicates it, but it's about the experience of kind of knowing someone on the internet versus knowing someone in real life, and how the more intimate that relationship is, the more difficult it is to get a real handle on it over a cable.
Oh yeah, no, that is a big issue sometimes. And
there's a
yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead.
There's a question from Neon. He asks, obviously earlier you spoke about, you receive messages from people coming out in their sexuality. Does that mean that you're sort of actively open to having people contact you about that?
I don't necessarily advertise myself as a counselor, and in fact there are lots of I often will point people towards other resources in those cases, where if sometimes they just want someone to talk to, and then I can do that. But if they're saying, like, I don't know how to handle my parents, I don't know how to deal with X or Y, then I'll point them towards youth centers in their area or other LGBT counselors and so on. That said, absolutely, if someone doesn't have anyone else to talk to, I would much rather that they contact me than that they just give up or continue to be miserable. I think there are professional resources that are easy to find out there, but I don't want to tell people don't contact me. So yes, if people are in need of that, I'm not a licensed therapist or counselor or anything, but I will generally answer emails.
Yeah, that being said, this is not an advocation for everyone to just bombard you with emails,
Yes.
I would assume.
Yes, please don't. I have a job.
Erwin, or Advine, or
That
Erwin,
one.
I'll call him Erwin, actually asks, aside from or in addition to Black Angel and Over Time, what are you working on now?
Oh, goodness. So let me preface this by saying that on the front page of my website, which is kyellgold.com, there is a link to a monthly newsletter that I send out. I do not spam the mailing list. I send things out once a month, and it includes stuff that's coming up, stuff that upcoming conventions that I'll be at. I usually try to put a writing tip in there and maybe excerpts from things that I'm working on. So I try to make it fun and informative. So if people want to be kept up to date on that, and it's a Google group, so you can go back and look at previous months as well. That said, things that I'm working on. So Overtime is the 5th book in the Out of Position series. It will conclude that story. I am working on another story in that world that I can't talk about too much because the existence of that story is a spoiler for something that happens in the 5th book.
Okay.
I am working on, so for 5 years I've had this story about an alternate history United States where there are magic schools and there's a small population of basically animal people, furry critters, who have been created by magic. And so I have a story about the first one of those to attend a magic school and try to become a sorcerer himself, which is fraught with all kinds of political and personal danger. That one, the first book is done and hopefully will be shopping around to publishers next year.
Under the name?
I'm not sure yet. I would like to put it out under this name, under Kyell Gold, but I will certainly be letting you know where and when it comes out.
I mean, like, as the title. What's the
the title of the book.
Yeah.
The title of the book is The Tower and the Fox.
Ah, okay. Cool.
Okay.
So something to look forward to.
Buglish mentions, I mean, now that's obviously more sort of into your fantasy, but Buglish mentions sci-fi furry books like Foxes in Space.
There is Mary Loud's Otters in Space.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Otters in space, foxes in space. Next thing you know, it's cats in space, and then cats are just literally just, what's the word? Twisting around in the air, trying to find where the hell the ground is.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna have to touch one of that. Yeah. Would you consider it?
Oh, a science fiction? I've written some science fiction. It's funny because I used to be a little more into science fiction than I am now. My tastes now run more towards fantasy and contemporary fantasy. That said, if I had a good science fiction idea, I would absolutely write it. I just don't spend a lot of time thinking in that space, so to speak.
Fair point. I mean,
well, I mean, you've.
Yeah.
No, go.
Nice. I was just about to elaborate. It's fine. Never mind.
No, go. Yeah, I'm gonna go off topic from here.
It's fine.
Elaborate.
I promise you. It's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. One of the things that I want to ask is, now obviously you've been like going to all of these conventions and things like that, and I mean, being a guest of honor probably takes a large amount of your time, more than say, actually going to cons to have fun, because you're constantly working, I guess, and it probably does get kind of taxing sometimes. I mean, like, a lot of people go to the cons to have fun, and I mean, I remember we were talking about it the other day, but like, I mean, when it comes to people going to conventions, you said that you get your furs that would go to and like take interest in this thing and take interest in that. What I want to know is, what are your personal interests? Like, when you go to a con,
well,
what do you look for?
When I go to a con, so I'm already fairly plugged into the writing community. So when I go to conventions, I look for the books that I've heard about, that I know are going to come out. Take a look at that. Mostly, I like to go around and look at the artists, look at what new artists have come into the fandom, because or what existing artists are doing now, because artists are constantly changing their style. New artists are coming in with new styles. There's trends. There's all kinds of different ways of depicting characters, and so we just Kit, my husband, and I just really like to walk around the dealer room and the art show and see what's out there from a visual sense.
Speaking of the writing scene, how much has the whole young adult fiction thing pervaded the furry writing community? Like the whole.
Not a whole lot, as far as I can tell.
Okay. Because I know
mean,
that stuff has become like really like trashy, easy to churn out stuff recently.
You mean Mills and Booney?
Yeah, kind of, but even worse. Yeah, I mean, sort of the writing of that kind of those kinds of books just really, like.
So, are you sort of saying that, like, you have Kyell Gold on the one side, and then like not everything else, but I mean, a lot of what's coming out nowadays is what you could call like sort of young adult smut, rather than having like an actual story.
Yeah, sort of stuff like that, like really like. I hate to single out stuff like Twilight, but like that kind of stuff is really becoming pervasive, and it's like getting its own section in bookstores and crap like that. I'm like, ugh.
Young adult contemporary.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest, that hasn't hit the furry market so much because you have sites like Furry where people can just write their Twilight stories or whatever, but the kind of the pervasive thing in furry is not so much the young adult stuff as just the adult stuff.
Fair point.
But I think from what I've seen, there's a lot of the writing scene has actually, just in the last few years, gotten much more interesting. And I think one of the ways to look at it, full disclosure, I was around Sofa Wolf at the time of its founding, and I've worked with them in an editorial capacity and so on.
Mm-hmm.
I think Sofa Wolf Press coming in '99 or 2000 and providing a sort of semi-professional to some professional venue for furry fiction helped jumpstart the writing scene to some extent. Fur Planet coming in Fuzz will kill me if I don't get the date right. I want to say it was 2006 or 7 that they bought it from Nexus. But Fur Planet came in, and Sofa Wolf's philosophy had always been, we'll put out a few books a year and we'll curate them and we'll do a lot of work with them. Fur Planet's philosophy was, you write your book, we're doing it print on demand, so if it sells 2 copies, we'll print 2 copies, and it's no skin off our nose, muzzle, whatever. But Fur Planet's also been very active and engaged with the writing community, and they've really helped provide a venue for the artists and writers in the last 5 years. And so we've seen a lot of people come in and really say, okay, I don't just want to write my, narrative version of the role play I had the other night, which is fine. I'm not disparaging that. I'm just saying that there are people who want to put work into writing and do more with it. And Fur Planet's providing a venue for those people. The Furry Writers Guild is also providing a venue for people to come in and do that. And so what you're getting is not so much the young adult thing as people are just writing really good stories and getting them out there for everyone.
All right. Well, that's good to hear.
I actually have an interesting question that's just popped into my head. Do you feel bad? Do you really feel bad for some of the things that you do to your characters?
Oh, not really. Mostly they deserve it.
Ouch, man.
Wow. So Dev really deserves what he gets.
Yeah, well, if he doesn't deserve it, at least it makes him a better person in the end. I pal around with Rukus and KM Hirosaki, and if you want to talk about being cruel to their characters, you should go have conversations with those two, because what I do is nothing.
Yeah, go.
If it's an extension on this topic, go ahead, because I'm about to shift gears.
Well, it is sort of an extension. Buglish asks, would you kill a character like they do in Game of Thrones?
I would kill a character. I would probably not do it like they do in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, like completely unfucking
Throw dice, person dies.
Yeah, pretty much. No, I have done that in a couple of books in the past. If the situation's right, if the character calls for it. I mean, Argaea, the old Renaissance world, is a much more perilous place to live. People just kind of stab each other sometimes. In the out of position world, it's not so much, but you can still, there's still some danger.
You could say that they stab each other.
God damn it.
Come on, it was there, it was open. Anyway. Dude, there has to be at least
you
one
people.
of them. I mean, that's exactly how it is.
Yeah, I try to
wanted to.
Yeah, I try to rein myself in, but Ivik, he just has zero filter.
I have no filter.
Yeah, I noticed.
You've attested to this on several periods. Go.
My question is: has there ever been a point where you feel not necessarily limited by the medium that you tell stories in, aka writing, but that perhaps whatever you're doing could be told better in, for example, a comic or something more visually based?
That's a really good question, actually. I think that there are for sure limitations to any form of expression.
Mm-hmm.
There have been stories where I've seen them very strongly in my head and thought, man, I wish I had $10,000 so I could pay somebody the going rate to draw this as a comic.
Yeah.
There's also benefits. I try to focus on the positives, which is not what you asked about, but yeah, absolutely. I have for sure had a couple projects where I said, I would love this to be a stage play, or I'd love this to be a movie, or I'd love this to be a comic, and the neat thing is that when you write a story, a story can hop around through different media.
Mm.
You know, Game of Thrones is an excellent example. Game of Thrones was a book, or actually it was a series of books, a series of very long books. Got turned into a TV show, has also been a comic book. So, at a certain point, if there's a thing that I really want to do, like I wrote actually a stage adaptation for my first book, Vol, and Kit keeps trying to get me to do one for Out of Position. But we'll see. At some point I may have the time and resources to actually make something like that happen.
Sweet.
But people have approached you about like making things for some of the things that you've written. I mean, there's that animatic on YouTube recently, or not recently, but it came out with some of the stuff from Out of Position and from that series, where they've actually created the animatic between which sort of explains the relationship between Dev and I can't believe I forgot his name. The fox.
Lee.
Lee,
that's
yes.
That's the one set to the Jason Mraz song. That was something that Kit and I actually commissioned. We worked with two very talented friends of ours, Don Ryu and Ammon Omega, if I can plug them. They did storyboarding. Ammon actually drew the character designs. Don Ryu did some of the storyboards for it. And yeah, one of the things on our list that we would love to do, and we just have to kind of get the funding together to do it, is raise the money to be able to fully animate that as a music video.
Oh, that's cool.
But has anybody, like I said, has anybody actually approached you saying, "Hey, by the way, I'm making fan art for you, or I'm making a little comic based on XYZ. Is that okay with you?"
Yeah, and people have asked me about fan art, fan fiction. My rule about fan fiction in general is try to stay true to the characters, attribute the original story, and don't expect me to read it, because I don't. Well, there's a whole. I did a whole blog post on why I don't read people's fan fiction, and partly it comes down to I don't want to have to second guess myself when I'm writing stories in the future and say, wait, did I get this story idea from that fan fiction that I read? Because I don't think that would be fair.
Yeah, and also that could, in some circles, actually lead to a little bit of, like, if people are overly litigious, they could sue for that or something like that.
Yes. Fortunately, we in the United States are not known for being an overly litigious society.
Oh, of course not. Heaven forbid.
But yes, that actually apparently has happened once or twice in science fiction fandom, where somebody had written a thing and the author had written back saying, "Oh, that's neat," and then later a book came out and they said, "You took my ideas." So I try to just stay away
Isn't that
from
something that happened to Stephen King? That did happen to Stephen King at some point, I swear.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd heard it happen to Marion Zimmer Bradley, but it could be one of those stories that just made the round and the name of the author changed.
I mean, the thing is, you've like we were talking earlier. I mean, you've been in the fandom for years, and one of the questions that I think I asked then, at least on Thursday, that I really want to talk about now is that, like, how briefly, how do you think that the fandom has changed between then and where we are now? I mean, I know that it was smaller then, but
well, so there've been a lot of the changes have been sort of technology based. Back when I started in the fandom, there was, I think, as I mentioned to you, I think there was basically the online component was Furry Muck and Alt Fan Furry, and I think Conference had just started, although I would not go to conference for a few years, and that was the first furry convention. So back then, it was a collection of people who sort of knew each other, who were getting to know each other through the internet. And Furry Muck, I know you said you're that it's still active, and I think at least one or two of you are still on it. But Furry Muck was this great place because it allowed you to go online and really role play as a furry, as this sort of animal person avatar of yourself, and it was really cool, and it was a lot of fun. And so, from my personal perspective, a lot of my interactions in those first few years were almost entirely online on the Muck. I gradually got to meet a few people in person, but the in-person community that I knew was vastly outnumbered by the people that I would talk to only online. And that's one of the things that's changed as the fandom has grown, is that people, I think, go online first, but they go online to find out where the local meet is. And so they meet people in person and develop friendships in person before they develop friendships online now. That's one of the huge things. Another thing is that I don't think when I logged into Furry, I could conceive that someone from South Africa, for example, would be on Furry Muck because I know I had friends in Europe and all over the world. But man, I don't know that I could ever have conceived of just having a conversation with some furries in South Africa that would then be broadcast around the world as we were having it. That's pretty amazing. And I think one more thing that I want to say, and then you can go on and ask a follow-up if you want. The neatest thing to me, the absolute most wonderful thing about the furry fandom is that the same sense of inclusion and fun and enthusiasm that I got from those first conferences where it was a few hundred people gathering at the only furry convention in the world in Southern California. I get that at pretty much every furry convention that I go to still. The community is still the same, the sense of fun, the sense of everyone belongs here, everyone can be a part of this. And just the joy that people get out of being part of this community is something that has not changed over the years. And that's one of the reasons that I'm still a part of this community, is because it's so awesome.
Well, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sort of planning our own con pretty soon, and I mean, I hope as much as we can get enough of the South African furs together that we can bring that same level of inclusion and that same amount of fun to everything, to our do.
I hope so too. I'm excited for you guys to have a convention.
One of our furs is asking whether you'd ever do a straight novel.
I have actually done a straight novel, so the answer is yes. It is called The Silver Circle, and it's online everywhere, and it's out through Fur Planet. It's a book about a woman who is coming off of a divorce and goes up to upstate New York, and runs into a tribe of werewolves. Sorry. And finds a very sexy male werewolf.
Huh. Okay. Interesting.
Noted.
Look for it. Find it. Anyway,
Did you make it more creepy? Don't. Just move on.
Apparently the stream cut out again, but yeah, really not much we can do about that. Kyell, you're a very, very positive person. I mean, like, at least from what I've been able to sort of pick up and things like that. I mean, there is a large amount of, vitriol outside, both towards and sometimes from the community itself. I mean, like, how do you allow that not to sort of get you down? Because I'm sure that you probably get hate mail too for just writing, gay orientated and homosexual orientated books.
Weird. I'm very grateful that I actually do not get a lot of negative mail. I think like I had put the first 2 parts of Waterways out for free, and then I wrote the 3rd part and we packaged it as a novel. So people had to go buy the novel, and basically it was like you got the first 3/4 of the book for free, and then if you wanted the last part, which was a small amount, then you had to go buy the book. And I think I got 1 negative comment on my FA or on my live journal or whatever I was using at the time about that. But yeah, generally I don't get negative mail. I get mostly positive, mostly positive things. And I know that there are forums out there where people are more negative, but I try to stay away from them because there's not really much point to reading it.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, you've never had like an angry mother like send you a mail saying, "You have influenced my child. They're both furry and gay. This sucks."
I have not had that happen. I have had an email from a mother saying that her son was reading these books and she just wanted to. She was like, okay. Actually, this was the best email that I got from a mother. She was like, so my son just came out to me about being a furry, and he's kind of embarrassed about it, but one of the things he liked was your books, and so I did some snooping around online, and I found your email address, and I hope you don't mind, but, like, I'm trying to find out how I can be supportive of him being a furry. Like, I don't really understand what this is all about, so can you help me, like, understand how to be supportive of my furry, maybe gay teenage son?
Fucking mom of the year.
And then she was like,
yeah.
She was like, well, and I'm in a lesbian relationship, so we're a very open household, and we've told him that he's free to talk about anything, but he's kind of embarrassed about this still, and so I put out I tweeted to my fans and said, so hey, fans who were once teenagers or who are now teenagers, what would you want your mom to have done to be more supportive of you being a furry? And I got a lot of great answers. People were like, let me go to conventions. Some people said, go to conventions with me. I encouraged her to ask her son, like, so what's your fursona? So she was very pleased with all the advice that we gave her, and I didn't hear from her after that, so I'm assuming it all worked out.
That is awesome. that is the feel-good story of the day.
No, seriously. And
really cool.
Yeah, speaking of the day, we are about 5 minutes or so from wrapping this up. So, if anyone still has any questions in the peanut gallery, please fire them down.
Yep.
Then we're gonna be wrapping up soon.
Yeah. I'm going to thank the people in the Peanut Gallery so far. Twitchy Tail, Neon, Raccoon, Buglish, Kinkinzade, Ravensong, Doge, Irwin, Kamazots, I think. Kamazots.
Oh, is that Irwin, my Russian fan named Irwin, rather, who tweets at me?
Could be.
It could be that. PJ Wolf, Enigmatic Wolf, Victor, and Yote Fox. Thank you guys for listening. We really, really appreciate it.
Oh, hey, PJ.
Okay.
And everyone on the other, I mean, we can
Furry
only really see,
FM?
on Furry FM, of course, because this is only the first stream chat we're listening right now. And also, yes, apparently it is the Russian Irwin that you were mentioning.
Oh, excellent! Woo. He's been posting Russian translations of some of my work on FA. So
fantastic!
And has been I assume photoshopping very cool covers of my books with the titles in Russian, which I've been really excited about.
I've actually seen those.
Aren't they cool? I wanted
Also,
to learn Russian, but I think I'm going to have to wait until I learn German.
yeah, because then you can actually speak to the Furry FM people, because the vast majority of the listenership from Furry FM they're German. So I mean, if you do learn a little bit of German and actually can sort of converse with them, maybe
awesome.
they might call you up at one point and say, "Hey, do a German thing for us. Come on."
Oh my God. I learned enough German to successfully order a Kaiserschmarrn when I was over in Eurofurence last year.
Which is what
I said,
exactly?
wir möchten einen Kaiserschmarrn. And that was about it. I started taking some German lessons, but I didn't get very far.
One of the things that I do want to say is that Raccoon has been posting this, and I've been meaning to talk about it. But the top 10, Fred Patton actually put Green Fairy in his top 10 books every fur should read. How do you feel about that?
Very, very flattered. He's Green Fairy is one of the more complicated books that I've written, in that it has 3 different stories that I wrote in attempting to have 3 different narrative voices. It was sort of my attempt to do an homage to Cloud Atlas, which has 6 different narrators and 6 completely distinct narrative voices, which is an amazing book.
Have you seen the movie?
I settled for 3. I have seen the movie. I actually enjoyed the movie quite a bit.
I was really freaked out by, I think Salmoni's story, when they take the collar off of her. There's that like weird, weird, ugly-looking Japanese dude that like takes the thing off with a robot eye. Right? Are we there, Kyle? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, just to finish that story, that weird-looking guy with the robot eye, that's Halle Berry. You shit you not. That's Halle Berry in makeup. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I'd also like to people who just popped up here, Rene Owen and Rechan, just like to sort of in post things say yes, thank you for listening. Hopefully he'll be back on soon, because then we can thank him as well.
Yeah. And, also for anyone who might have missed out on anything, this is going up on YouTube within the hour, I suppose, after this.
We've been given enough time. Yeah. So while we're waiting for him to come back on, we'd like to thank you guys so much for actually listening to our podcast. Once again, those of you from Furry FM, we really, really appreciate your patronage, would probably be the term. Also, for anybody who sort of caught us on Tumblr or on Twitter or anywhere, or Google Plus, etc., please just keep looking out for posts that we're going to have there. We have some interesting guests that we've had on before that will probably be lined up for later. People like Potteroo might come back on again. J.M. Horse obviously came back from America. We'd love to hear what he has to say about the American furry scene. Of course, a very, very big thing happening next month is we have Uncle Kage lined up. Squee. And yeah, I mean, like, the thing is that we're trying to do this, as an explanation, I guess, because we haven't necessarily said who we are yet. For the people on Furry FM, we are South Afrifur. We've recently linked up with Furry FM to be more of an English connection to the people outside, to the people listening and things like that. And we really thank them for giving us the opportunity to do so. One of the other things that I also want to talk about is that, like, as South Afrifur, we kind of started out a year back, and just kind of tried to give some sort of international connection from South Africa to show that, South Africa does in fact exist, as a furry community, and that we're sort of trying to be active and trying to show that we can actually get there.
Got your back, Kyle.
And Kyle's back.
I'm back. Hooray!
And I'm actually done plugging. Great. Very, very good.
Yeah. So if you want to say any thank you, Kyell, now is your time.
Okay, I want to thank you guys, all of the people supporting the technology involved in this, but you guys for inviting me to be on and for hosting. This has been a lot of
Yeah, a lot of break.
A lot of
conversation.
Okay.
And thanks everyone for listening and asking questions too.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
But-
And Kyle, just to finish the statement that I made, the guy in the weird robot Japanese guy with the cyborg eye that takes off Zombie's collar in the movie, that's Halle Berry in makeup.
Wow. Yeah, the things that they do with makeup in that movie are amazing.
Fucking amazing. And
the people doing, and it didn't get any award nominations.
I know,
from
right?
the Oscars that year.
Freaking hell.
Crazy.
And Hugo weaving in a nurse's outfit was just like one of the best things in that movie.
All of the character stuff they did was great.
Yeah. Okay.
Doge actually says that he's been squeeing for about the past 2 weeks while we were sort of setting things up with you as well. He's one of the guys who works behind the scenes with us, fixes up interesting leads and everything like that. So maybe also thank you to Doge for being there to help out when he can.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
big thanks to Doge for helping out with the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah. Which is something that we don't necessarily do often, to say that, thank you to those people who actually do these things. But yeah, I mean, once again, thank you very, very much. We'd love to have you on again sometime. Just let us know when you've got time to do something, or when you have something interesting to talk about, or we can go, because this is so general with the way that we've been speaking. And it's much like our conversation with Pottery. I mean, like, I'm not even sure if we actually connected with some of the other questions that we've sort of outlined on Thursday. I mean, to get to those would be awesome.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure we probably at least have another hour and a half of stuff to talk about. So I think I'll have to come back and finish up some of those conversations.
Yay! Woohoo! That's gonna be awesome. But yeah, thanks again, dude. This was incredible having you on.
And thank you guys again for being terrific hosts. And good luck with your convention too.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes.
So just a note for you, Kyell. Kyle. Why do I keep on saying it like that? Anyway,
It's fine.
We do just want to speak to you after so don't leave directly.
Nope.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, guys. We really, really enjoyed having this podcast for you. We are more than sort of pleased for the fact that Kyell was actually able to be on the podcast, and really so check us out next week. We'll be posting on Tumblr throughout the week to tell you who the next guest is and things like that. So those will be coming out probably by Wednesday. The YouTube video, which will also be on South Afrifur on YouTube, youtube.com/c/South Afrifur. And yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good evening. And safe drive, Kyle.
Thank you.
Cool. Cheers, cheers.
Cheers, guys.